Welcome to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt. On the radio, on podcasts everywhere, on Facebook, on YouTube, and on talklawradio.com. I'm here today with Ben Kemmy, who's an injury and wrongful death attorney here in San Antonio. Also, Shannon Roberta Salmon Haas,
Hi, Todd.
who is representing the Instagram influencers and encouragers of the world. Shannon, how are you encouraging people this week?
This week I took a CLE, and so we have to do that continuing legal education. This week felt like any obligation I had, any responsibility that was mine, all landed on this week. So I've been really scrambling to fit everything in. But I got here, and
Yeah.
we're doing this, and next week should be better.
Yeah, well, you look great.
You just made my heart soar when you told me that. Thank you. You do too. You as well.
I love the colors.
Thank you. You're
Yeah.
really good for my self-esteem. Thank you.
Okay, so we want to know more about Ben before we start talking about lawsuits following the Hill Country flooding and whether they're going to be viable or not. Ben, where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? How did you get into this?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me today. Yeah, I'm a San Antonian. I grew up here, was born and raised here. I went to Antonian in Castle Hills, a Catholic school in Castle Hills. I went to college at Notre Dame, and I went to law school at the University of Houston before my wife and I moved back when we had our daughter. So I've been a lawyer for a little over 10 years, and I've been practicing personal injury and wrongful death the whole time. Yeah.
Okay, and why did you choose that field, that focus?
One main reason is just it was a family business already. My dad has been a personal injury lawyer in San Antonio for over 30 years. And so I grew up kind of around his practice a lot. And I wasn't even sure I wanted to go into law when I graduated college. So I took some time off. But then once I started my legal education, I knew that I wanted to do trial work rather than, transactional work. And then once I decided that, it kind of just fit naturally to represent injured plaintiffs and work with families and injured people that way. It's been really rewarding, and it's been a great fit. Yeah.
How interesting.
Yeah, tell me more about the rewarding part. What do you find rewarding about it?
I think, to me, the most rewarding aspect of it is to work with people who are oftentimes in really difficult or they're grieving a loss in the family or a new disability that they didn't have before, and ensuring that they know what happened and why, ensuring that there's some accountability that can be realized when the law provides it, and helping them start a new chapter in their life and get back on their feet, so to speak. That's really the most rewarding part.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
It does, yeah.
So we've been doing, my dad has been doing it for over 30 years. And so now I practice with him and 4 of my brothers. And so we all do personal injury work
So
together.
this is Ben Kemmy, and what's the family law firm name?
The Kemmy Law Firm. We're down on Main, right by SAC. And so we all office together with the 2 dogs that my brothers bring in. It's a family atmosphere.
That's great.
That is good, yeah.
Well, family atmospheres can be positive or they can maybe be negative.
Sure.
What's it like to get through a day or a week with family all the time?
Mostly a lot of fun. And in a family business, there's a lot more cooperation in some ways.
Right.
Because we're not trying to one up each other to, make some kind of partner track. We're all just in this together.
Right.
And then, yeah, of course, families have their own dynamics that exist in any endeavor you can come up with, whether it's camping or practicing law.
Where are you in the birth order?
I'm the second oldest. So my older brother, Nick, and then me, and then my brother, Jack, Danny, and Seamus, all of us practice together. Yeah.
And so are you the peacemaker, or is it your next youngest? Usually it's
I
the
think
He's
middle
the
child.
instigator. I saw it, right? Did you see that hesitation?
I think we wear that hat, pass it around depending on the situation, but she's probably right. That title usually goes to my brother Seamus. So,
That's awesome.
That is cool.
Okay, well, we've talked about your background. Now, tell us where you got your education, and then I guess you came back to San Antonio to be with family. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So my wife is from here. I'm from here, and so we were in Houston for the first couple of years of my practice, and then once we had my daughter, it was just like, well. There's a
Right.
whole bunch of people at home
Right.
that can help us.
Be closer to
Yeah.
family.
And so that kind of was the reason for my move. And then at first I just started officing with my dad because I needed office space. And then
Mhm.
kind of over a couple of years, our dockets began to merge more and more until we just decided to hang a shingle together.
He
So
must be so proud.
he is. He's stressed, proud, and happy, and all at once. And so
It sounds like he gave you the freedom, though, that you got to explore and see if you really wanted to do this. He didn't force you into it.
for
But
sure.
I bet he's so proud.
For sure. And in fact, I think more than anything, he cautioned each of us that,
Right.
becoming a lawyer is a huge responsibility.
Right.
And it's not for everyone.
Right. And he'd be so qualified to, because he's done it. So he
Yeah.
knows the
Right.
good and the bad.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And so, no, by no means was this, in the works, from when we were kids. It just kind of came together. But-
Okay, well, the thing I want to talk about the most is the Texas Hill Country flood that happened on July 4th. And it's a tragedy. I mean, we all recognize that. People died and they lost loved ones and they lost property and they had injuries. And so the Express News reported on some attorneys that had ads on the internet
Mhm.
about trying to reach these victims and see if they could file lawsuits on their behalf. And so that's why I wanted to talk to you about that. When there's a flood like this, who's responsible?
Yeah. And,
Who can you file a lawsuit against?
and I think, first of all, like you said, it is just a tragedy of like unimaginable magnitude that we lost over 130 Texans in a single morning. And so for those families that are still grieving, I do believe this, my prayers go out to you.
Amen.
And may you be
Yeah.
comforted in
The
your
whole
grief.
community. I mean, well, all of us.
yeah.
We all.
Yeah.
Well,
I-
nationwide, actually, you can say everybody. It just touched everybody.
Yeah. And I think it's one of the saddest events in my lifetime as a Texan. I'm 40 years old. But especially the loss of so many children was just especially painful. But of course, yeah, when awful things like this happen, it's natural to ask questions as to why. Not only for, there being accountability or justice to the families, but also just, is there something that we can do so that something like this doesn't happen again? And so I think both of those questions still have a long way to go to be fully answered.
Right. Yeah.
But if you think about the possibility of the claims, there's, of course, the government's role in coming up with the disaster management plan, responding to the disaster while it was unfolding. You can put one bucket of issues there. A second with the camps. There's a lot of camps in that county. I used to go to camp in that county. And so those claims are going to be analyzed a little bit differently. And then the third is just people who are in RV parks or rental properties who were caught up. And there were people who died in those situations as well.
Right.
And so those are kind of three main areas that you would look at with this tragedy. And so they all have unique challenges ahead of them.
Okay. So for those people that aren't lawyers, talking with Ben Kemmy, he's an attorney here in San Antonio who focuses on personal injury and wrongful death. And so just in 1 minute or less, can you explain what that term wrongful death really means?
Right. Wrongful death it's a lawyer phrase, but it means that somebody died because of carelessness. Death is a natural part of life for all human beings, but the circumstances under which people die can be because of carelessness. Anything from texting and driving and not watching the road to substandard medical care, and it runs the gamut of all kinds of ways where people die not intentionally. Nobody intended that to happen, but it was the carelessness of somebody that caused it.
So this is Talk Law Radio with guest Ben Kemmy. We're talking about whether lawsuits following the July 4th Texas flood could be viable. We have to take a break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt on the radio, on podcasts, on Facebook, on YouTube, and on talklawradio.com. Shannon's the one that's on Instagram. So do you want to talk about what's going on with Instagram today or this week or this month?
I like Instagram a little better. I don't know why, but I feel it's probably delusional, but I feel a little bit safer on Instagram. If someone's going to go viral for all the wrong reasons, it's usually TikTok. It's not Instagram.
But
There's grandmas on Instagram, and I know there's other stuff too.
Well, maybe that's your audience.
Right, maybe I think so.
Embrace that.
I was learning a little bit about social media law at this CLE that I was at. And I was telling, because I met a pastor there also, and I was telling him, this is where the people are. They're on social media. So if you claim to love people, because a lot of my friends say, oh, stay away from that. It's bad. This is a very evil thing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you love people, that's where they are. So you might want to rethink whether you want to be on there or not.
Right. I've had people say that too. They're afraid of social media because they say offensive things and they post offensive things.
Right.
And you don't want to see that. You don't want your kids to be involved in that.
Exactly. There's a lot. There's dangers.
But it's like when the caveman invented the fire.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm sure that he got burned.
Right.
Yeah. One hopes that the next generation, my daughter's 8, and I think we're thinking about ways to delay some of the screen
Mhm.
exposure
Right.
and be a little bit more thoughtful
Mhm.
with how kids are brought up with these tools. But certainly for the past, 20 years since Facebook has existed, it's been a lot of trial and error.
I
Yeah.
tried to avoid Facebook because I didn't like just people watching your life. I felt like Facebook was the
Mhm.
Truman Show.
Right.
It's not really like that. It's just that people want to be the Truman.
Right.
Yeah, and that is kind of, I think, the older school perspective on it came out when I was in college, and so at first it was literally just a picture of people's faces, and now
Right, and
now
so
it's quite different.
Right.
I said, I don't want to see those
Mhm.
people. Like, I left high
Mhm.
school. See ya.
Mhm.
I didn't want to keep in touch with those guys.
Right. I've
But if
heard
I'm
that.
friends with you on Facebook and I went to high
I like
school with
you.
you, we're still cool, okay? But let's get back to wrongful death and whether that's a viable claim following the floods in the Texas Hill Country on
Todd,
July 4th.
Can I ask you something? So what was the Express News? Was it generally negative that this was a very predatory type of action?
Yes, that was the angle on it.
I see.
But I think that there's a different way to look at it. Is there, Ben?
Yeah, I think so, and I totally understand how people out in the public have negative reactions to lawyers advertising for
After a
after a
tragedy.
tragedy. It looks unsavory. It looks disrespectful to the community, and so I get that. We're not advertising for these cases, and we're not looking at these cases. And so if there are any lawyers who are considering taking these cases, I would just, advise that everybody proceed cautiously and really
Right.
zero down on that person's individual case and see if there's any avenue of recovery for that individual person would be my recommendation.
That's good advice,
Yeah.
I would think. Yeah.
So I learned in torts, which is what they call civil lawsuits for damages, that in order to find negligence, there has to be a duty, a breach of that duty, a causation from that breach that causes damages. Is that still the analysis when you look at this type of case?
Yeah, that's still the bedrock of any injury or wrongful death case. And what that is, it just means that the law has a standard that applies in all sorts of situations. In most situations that you can think of where we're interacting, doing business, driving on the road. And that is just that we all, as kind of a social compact, agree that we're going to act reasonably around each other so that, none of us are unnecessarily harmed.
Mhm.
And so when the law can find that I have breached that duty to somebody and I have caused them unnecessary harm that's led to damages, and damages can either be pocketbook expenses or what's now called non-economic damages for like the loss of a limb or something.
Pain and suffering.
Correct. That it's my responsibility to pay those damages, and that's usually done by way of insurance. Yeah.
Okay, so bring that to the situation with the flood. You mentioned some of the different issues
hmm
where the county has some infrastructure in place. Did they have a duty with regard to the flood to have some type of warning system or to have rivers that don't overflow? I don't know.
And so that's a good question, Todd. And I think here it's important to distinguish between different kinds of duties, right? Because we can have a moral duty, we can have a political duty to enact good policy. That doesn't mean that we have a legal duty to do those things. And so, for example, you brought up like warning systems. That is a kind of thing that is decided by policymakers, by elected representatives who decide what is the best policy for our community to have related to the river, for example. And so if they decide that we don't need external sirens by the river, no court is going to say that they had a legal duty to do that. And there's a reason for that. It's because in our American system of government, we leave certain decisions to elected representatives.
Mhm.
And once they make that decision, we don't really want courts to come in and say, we're holding you accountable because that was a bad decision. That would put the court above the elected
Right. We have
policymakers.
separations of powers.
Right. And so as it relates to the flood, there's going to be a lot of questions about whether a better warning system would have saved lives. And even if the answer is yes, the failure to adopt a better policy is not, it's going to be very difficult to make a lawsuit work on that basis.
Okay, let's quickly shift to the camps.
Yeah.
You attended a camp in that area, and most of the time there's no floods, and
Mhm.
so all the kids have a great time. It shapes their childhood in some
Mhm.
way, and everybody's happy. But in this case, there were cabins next to the river,
Yeah.
and the river flooded. Just speculating, if there were a camp like that, do they have a duty to not build a cabin next to a river?
This is a different situation because, of course, when you drop your kids off to a camp, the agreement is that you're going to take care of my child. You're going to
Mhm.
reasonably take care of my child while they're here. And so, yes, the camps do have a duty towards their campers. Bottom line, yes, they do. They have a duty to reasonably keep them safe. And it may turn out that it was unreasonable to put those cabins where they were. I'm not going to hazard a guess on that. That's going to be the subject of expert testimony about
Right.
where's a safe place to put a cabin. But the camps themselves, take Camp Mystic, for example, which is where, unfortunately and tragically, a lot of young girls were swept away in the flood. That's a Christian camp that is likely going to come under the protection of the charitable immunity statute. And what that means is that the law treats charitable nonprofits differently when it comes to injury and death claims than it does, for-profit institutions like Walmart. And the reason for that is that we want those charitable institutions to succeed without a whole lot of insurance liability costs, mainly. And so there are protections for charitable institutions like Christian camps in situations like this.
Okay, quickly,
Mhm.
what if there was a waiver of liability? The parents sign off, they say, if anything bad happens, the camp's not responsible. Does that hold water in court?
It can. Usually, it depends on the language of the waiver, and sometimes the courts set aside waivers on public policy grounds or construe them strictly
Mhm.
for reasons. But yes, the waivers of liability can have effect, and I think the analysis would be whether it is reasonable to read that as covering, where the cabin is going to be placed, because depending on the language, it could cover, things like somebody tripped on a sidewalk or somebody got hit with a baseball or something.
Right.
But whether it covers like the actual layout of the camp and whether it was a safe design, that's something that somebody would have to look at individually, waiver by waiver.
So this is Ben Kemmy. He's a personal injury attorney and wrongful death attorney in San Antonio. If you need to reach him,
Yeah, if you need to reach me, our website is at kemmylaw.com. You can reach us at advice@kemmylaw.com or our telephone number, 210-750-1019.
And that's KEMMY.
Yeah, I always do it for people over the phone. K as in King, E as in Edward, M as in Michael, M as in Michael, Y. Yeah.
All right. Shannon, I'm going to give you the last second just to say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Each week, attorney Todd Marquardt talks about the law. His mission with the Talk Law radio show and podcast is to help you discover your legal issue blind spots. In the beginning, God had one law. Don't eat from the fruit of that tree. Then came the 10 Commandments. Now we have federal, state, and municipal lawmakers that won't stop creating new laws. Laws that might impact you without you knowing it. Listen to the show and drop a line on Facebook or email host@talklawradio.com and let the host know what you think of the show, the topics you want to hear, and whether you want to be a guest.